think what is clear is that the impeachment is final. That is, my understanding is final. And that Article 185, when it is final, and there's no turning back. Professor Kindiki should be sworn as quick as yesterday, because this country cannot go on without legacy. We must have it. That is a principle.
Just before I let you go, Professor, yesterday we heard from the bench when the petitioners said that they are not satisfied with the bench as it is because it sat on a Saturday. And then the bench said that the applicants or the petitioners are raising issues when things do not go their way. And it said also when they got the conservatory orders, it's like they got settled. From your side, who you want, I know from your side you want the orders set aside. So what's your move? Because maybe from their direction they want this matter to delay. What do you have to say about that, and what will be your response from your side?
It is the delay that we avoid it, and that is why we want the application for setting aside to be heard, because any delay affects the public interest. The public interest is that a position as important as that of the nation should be filled. And parties cannot have limited orders, temporary orders, and avoid a substantive decision hearing the application set aside. That is why we will ask the President to prioritize that application, so that after hearing this application go straight to the application process. The other matters can be determined.
O'Brien, we have clearly listened. That's some of the issues that are going to be raised up when the bench starts sitting officially today. From the respondent side, you hear they want the application for setting the conservatory orders aside be given priority. Whereas, yes, from the petitioner side, you heard yesterday what they want. Back to you, O'Brien. We'll update you more as they happen.
That's our court reporter, Ruth Wamboi, at the Milmani Law Court, where she's tracking the happenings there. We are waiting for the arrival of the three-judge bench, which is expected to hear the respondents as well as the plaintiffs on that issue. And so we are definitely keeping an eye. And of course, those are some of the issues that we shall be discussing here. And of course, our big conversation this morning is around the upcoming Conference of Parties 29, which is happening in the city of Baku, Azerbaijan. And critical issues are going to be discussed, which are going to define the world of climate change in the years to come. And of course, that's a conversation that we are going to have here. I'm about to unveil my list of guests. But before we do that, I would just want to hear from Mithika Mwendwa. He's a governance expert and also the Executive Director at the Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance. He's joining us this morning. First of all, I want to pick up your brains on what is happening in the courts. I mean, this impeachment motion, I mean, it has taken, more time than everyone was expecting. And of course, the argument before the court. What do you make it? What do you make out of this?
I want first of all to have a disclaimer, because I've had a very heated debate with some lawyers. This is, the territory of lawyers. Mm-hmm. So the showdown and everything. So they may not want a person like us, mm-hmm. Who are not lawyers, to be part of this conversation. Yeah. But more importantly is really looking at what has been happening since, actually not even since the impeachment, but overall the whole conversation. It is testing the maturity of our democracy and the institutions, our courts, mm-hmm. the separation of powers within the three arms of the government, that is the parliament, that is judiciary, and of course the executive. So as concerned Kenyans, as a human rights activist, as one of the people who actively participated in the birthing of the new 2010 Constitution. Mm-hmm. We have confidence of our institutions, and we hope that justice will be delivered on either side. So that is what we are looking at. And secondly is about of course, everything is about politics at play.
Yeah.
I don't want really at this, because I am currently a climate change activist, but of course it happens, climate change is about everything. It's about governance, which we have. It's about economies of the country. It's about the socio cohesion. All these things actually have interplay. They have bearing on everything which we do. When we talk about the implementation of the NDC's National Determined Contribution, then our obligation under the Paris Agreement and our strategy, National Climate Change Strategy, and everything, all of them actually requires a stable government, requires stability, a stable governance. And so, as other Kenyans are keen, as other Kenyans are concerned about what is happening, because you cannot ignore it. Actually, the country is polarized, deeply polarized, unless we bury our hand into the sand like that proverbial ostrich and assume that, fine, we want to kick out the RIGATHI and that's all, there will be no repercussions. I think we are at a very critical moment, a polarized country. You know, we have other challenges which we have to address, which the government has to address. In a way, I can assure you that that is going to affect that, whatever the outcome at the court.
There will be some repose.
Yeah, sure.
And of course, as you rightly put it, I mean, you know, a quiet climate, a political climate, you know, is also good for investment. It's good for the development of a country.
Yes.
And so is the desire, you know, of each and every Kenyan that, you know, this issue is resolved amicably and as quickly as possible so that people can go back to their normal lives. And before now we delve into the issues at hand this morning, what is your message to, you know, the thousands of or millions of Kenyans, I mean, who are watching, you know, the proceedings before the court and wondering, I mean, what is happening in that country?
I think what inspires me, again, as a citizen, as a proud Kenyan, is actually the tenacity of our institutions. You remember there was a very hurried, you know, kind of way of ensuring that things happen quickly. But, you know, the court slammed the brakes. And that actually tells you the country which we are. I don't believe this could have happened in other countries, including in Zimbabwe, where she comes from. In fact, she watches it and she enjoys the democratic space with which we have. So it is our role, wherever I am, whether I come from the village, from the organization which I work, from where I sit, I think we need to protect our democracy. That's the bottom line. And so, whether, and this is the responsibility of everybody, whether it's a judge, advocate from both sides, and those who are concerned, we expect justice to be delivered, whether to RIGATHI and to those who impeached him. Of course, they are calling it a political process, but I hope the bench will go beyond that. Yes.
Very good.
And don't forget that I also come from Mlima. so I also have my opinion.
Yes.
We are also interacting with people in the Mlima, and we are really, of course, it's very, people are not even divided. There is a lot of concerns, and I don't want to say which side I am, but really, it is a big concern in the so-called Mlima. Yes.
I mean, when you go back to the Mlima, people just tell them that, I mean, everything is well, the economy is doing well, and these issues are going to be handled politically and legally, and we'll definitely go back to business.
Them. They know, you know, everybody sees. You know, all of us Kenyans, the level of consciousness with which we are operating now, everybody knows. Actually, people are meant, even their minds. You saw during the public participation, you saw what was happening. So everybody, you know, have their opinion whether you are small. That's the beauty of Kenya, that you are allowed to really articulate yourself without any repercussions. And that is what I would actually want and urge the KK government to uphold, political tolerance, you know, is very, very important. We don't need to agree, but you have the majority will always have their way, but also we need to give the minorities their say. Yes.
Very good. I mean, Memory Gachagua is the executive director at the Femnet, which is an NGO that deals with championing the welfare of women and children. You're from Zimbabwe, and Mithika Daktari has said something that this does not happen in Zimbabwe. When you look at this whole thing that is exploding and happening, you know, before our eyes, and when you're talking to your families and relatives and friends in Zimbabwe, what do you tell them?
I think we look and watch and learn. I think it's just not about, it's also for Africa, you know. I think it's how Africa is actually defining its democratic governance. And I think Kenya has been one of the bench-setting countries in terms of how they deal with their democratic space, having the liberty to use the court system, the legal system, to use as much of the means and uphold their constitution. So I think it's for Africa to be able to also look at what does it mean when countries have a constitution and they are using that constitution, they are using the legal means to ensure that there's voice from the people. So I think it's a time of liberation for the continent.
Yes.
And I think it's good to be in Kenya at such a time where we are able to also really look at having look at the different constituencies come together. And of course for me, coming from the women's movement, it would be like, we're not hearing a lot to say, can we have what we call a zebra system where, you know, in some countries, if one leader is a male, then the second is a female. So for us, that is what we'll be hoping to say. We want to have more African women as leaders and really support women to be out there and to be able to you know, to take the leadership positions. But I think it's great to also see the young people. I think it's one thing to see young people being able to have a voice. We are seeing some of the lawyers who are presenting, some of the legislators. I think the Kenya Parliament also has a lot of legislators who are also young. So also seeing that voice, because I think governance affects everyone.
Very
so
good.
The continent is watching.
The continent is watching. And I think before I allow you in, Dr. Mithika, the beauty of this is that what is unfolding before our eyes is the fact that we are seeing this battle of wits being fought in the corridors of justice as opposed to the street, where, you know, channels of events, you know, can be unpredictable. And that's the beauty of, you know, the Kenyan democracy, whereby there is clear roles of the judiciary, the executive, and of course the parliament, and so we are seeing it, you know, being displayed, where parliament is saying this is our forte, this is our turf. Then you have the judiciary saying, yes, we agree with you, this is what you're doing, but also this is also our area. And so it's going to be a very interesting conversation going forward. And as you're saying, I mean, Kenya is setting up the pace. It has never happened in Africa. So, you know, Kenya has set the pace. And of course, I'm sure, you know, so many Africans are going to picking up, you know, a few lessons and here and there. And what you said about giving women more voices, you know, in the leadership space. I remember, I think it was last year, where President William Ruto proposed that in the future we should have a situation whereby if the president is a male, then the deputy should be a female, and vice versa. And so I can see you want to say something, Mithika?
I think for your information, I've always been agenda champion. I'm one of the few men feminists. So I've been so with I think it is I think we need really everyone. We need whether it's affirmative action, which Kenya has tried, like this constitution, even one of the key questions which were being asked by this, when even the attorneys for the RIGATHI initially during the impeachment process at National Assembly, was whether that parliament is properly constituted, because there is a law which says that within a particular time after the 2010 constitution, we need that parliament to really ensure that it has a balance between the genders. And that has not been done. So somebody was questioning that. In fact, should this be an illegal parliament operating, without also talking about the questions which were being asked about the same parliament that it was impeached on June 25th, when there was it was overrun by Kenyans. So there are so many questions, but those are some of the fundamental issues which a society need. We have come to realize that, it is very difficult sometimes to implement. And that is the question of policy implementation has been really the biggest obstacle to even development in this country. But not even the space which we are, even at African level, we have got very brilliant ideas, very brilliant policies, very brilliant strategies. But when it comes really to implementing them, then it becomes zero. And those are the questions which we should be asking ourselves. Should we be having policy after policy without implementation? How do we focus on implementation more than that framing? Because one thing which is very important as a public policy expert is that the policy does not end into just framing. It ends up to the level of implementation. When you are framing, you are putting together, so you need to really think about implementation. But that is not what happens. So you see our partners, the development partners.
And even after implementation, you go to the next stage of evaluation.
Evaluation, so that you understand whether this was done. So we just move to pick very, very quick low-lying fruits. But the hard questions, the hard things which are supposed, like that, the question of gender has never been addressed. And so, and you see, many people are really wondering whether the refugee issue is even a national issue or a priority issue. Are we thinking about the NSSF chief crisis? Are we thinking about the education crisis? Are we thinking about other things which are really very pertinent, the Andani issue and all those, whatever they are saying, all this? So you see, when you look at Kenyans, they have their own opinion on what really should be the priority for our leaders. But as it happened in June 25, what culminated into June 25, it's really imperviousness of our leaders really to listen to the people. That's the most important thing, and that is the issue which we want really to address. I think that people understand what they want, and they're saying what is happening. So as I'm telling you, they have their own opinion. Is this the priority or not the priority? Of course, to the political class, of which sometimes I can remove my hat of the executive director of Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance and become also as more politicians at the village where I come from. And also, I have an opinion that this thing really needs to be handled very well. Of course, we have reached a situation where it's a point of no return. There are things need to be settled. We have, everyone is saying we have 2 deputy presidents. So who do we have? This is the court, which is, Kidiki is my friend. We studied with him in Moi University. So we have been together. We have seen all things. I'm very happy for him to being the deputy president of the Republic of Kenya. But then there are many fundamental things which really we need to look into for this country to thrive. One thing is we need really tranquility. We need peace. But at what expense are we going to have that peace? Of course, every time we are reminded, look now, I have friends in Sudan. You will know the Professor Sadan, your friend, whom you meet every time during the COP. Most of those guys have left their country because of that actually insecurity there, because of the conflict. We have many countries, Liberia coming out of Somalia here, more than almost 40 years, has never had a government. So it is not a good song to hear that we disintegrate. There is conflict. Conflict engulfs everything, even the things which we are talking about here, even the talk show which we are having here will never be there. So we need, our leaders need to be very careful, and really we need these conversations, and we need really leadership. Political leadership is very, very important.
And of course what we call political maturity, and to put Kenya first, you know, before anything else. I mean, those are some of the conversations we are having here. Remember, we are keeping an eye at the Milimani law courts, where the three-judge bench is expected to sit in a moment from now to listen to various arguments which are going to be floated by the lawyers representing various parties. And so we have our reporter there, Ruth Wambui, who has just given us an update as to what is happening. Remember, the bench was supposed to sit as from 9:30 up to now, which is what, and we are talking about 11:12, almost 11:15. The bench has not yet trooped into the courtroom, and so we're also keeping an eye to see exactly whence they come. We shall take you there so that you can listen to the proceedings there. And also today we're also having the conversation around the COP29. Remember, it is taking place in the city of Baku, Azerbaijan. We are talking about 15 days from now. The conversations that are going to take place there are going to be very critical in shaping the world of environment and the future of our world. So it's going to be a critical meeting. It has always been, of course, where you know, world leaders, they converge. Last year, the world leaders converged in the UAE, to be precise, you know, the city of Dubai, where various agreements were reached. And of course, we're also keeping an eye to see what exactly will come out of the COP29. You know, my bench this morning is fully constituted. We have, allow me to check, we have Dr. Mithika Mwenda. He's the Executive Director at Pan-African Climate Justice, joining us this morning. And of course, Memory Kachambwa, she's the Executive Director at Femnet. And joining us right now is Susan Otieno, who is also the Executive Director of Action Aid International Kenya. The beauty about this morning is that I am joined by executives. Everyone here is an executive. I think I should also get a title, executive anchor, so that all of us, you know, can have that executive title. Susan, thank you very much indeed for joining us. You know, before you joined us, you know, we were breaking bread and trying to understand, you know, everything that is happening in our courts, you know, with these Gachagua impeachment and so much. And we are trying to plead with Kenyans that, hey, look here, this is a political process. It has now taken a legal turn, and things will be sorted out. We should go back to our business. We have a country to develop. We have a country to love. We have trees to plant. We have rivers to take care of, and we have each other to love. What is your message to Kenyans?
Yeah, thank you so much. One thing that we need to realize as a country, that there are bigger issues beyond personalities and individuals to achieve. If you look at what's happening globally, everyone is looking towards COP29. Yeah. And the big question is, how much have we invested to prepare ourselves to be there, to prepare ourselves to really negotiate for what will work for us, to prepare ourselves to ask questions around what has not worked. If you committed to be giving 100 billion a year towards climate financing, what have you given? If they are claiming they met the 22, in 2022 they got more than 100 billion, but clearly 70% of it is loans. So why do we only get 30% in grants? What is the conversation ahead of us? As a country, sometimes we get derailed. We focus on individuals. We focus on issues that can be determined using the Constitution. And it's because we operate in impunity. And so once you operate in impunity, the critical issues will bypass you, because you want to show how you can push people around. And we are seeing it in everything. We are seeing it. We saw it in the finance bill. Allow me to go back there. People were pushed to the edge. And today, as we are talking, debts are pushing us to the edge. So there are critical issues that this country can truly focus on. If the decision was made fine that the deputy president has been impeached. Let us move to the next level. But also not forgetting that whatever reasons caused him to be impeached should also be looked at across board. So we don't stop at the deputy president. We've not cleaned up. It's not just the deputy president. A government is made up of so many facets, so many entities. Let's look through all of them. Yeah.
Very good. I mean, we now want to get deep into the issues that brought us here. And of course, because we are keeping an eye to see what the legal minds will tell us about the merits and demerits of these impeachment motion. So the issues we want to discuss today is the COP29 and the road ahead. For the third time, the Conference of Parties is being held in an oil-producing country. That's right. Last year it was in Dubai. The economy there is largely supported by fossil fuels. And before that, the COP27, it was held in Sharm el Sheikh. Is a desert tourism city in Egypt. And this time around, it is taking place in Azerbaijan, Baku to be precise. And so, you know, there has been many theories. What is happening? Why are we having, you know, the critical climate meetings being held in countries whose economies are driven by oil? That's a question I want to hear. I want to pose to Dr. Mithika Mwenda.
Yeah. So I think I have been part of this process for quite more than a decade. And just that's, you know, an operational issue. Even before we go, it's I could call it a geopolitical issue and a geostrategic issue. What really determines at the UNFCCC who hosts the COP is, you know, a UN process where there must be rotations. It's rotational. There is the time for Africa. There is also just regional. It has to be hosted. And so what determines then that is first of all, the capacity of that particular country to host. And the question is drawn to that particular region. Like now, it was the time for Eastern Europe. And there was a very heated debate. You know, geopolitically, the main countries which could have really hosted there, maybe we could have held it in St. Petersburg or Moscow. It has been held in Poland for around 4 times because of the same issue that many countries in that region do not come out, you know, to take up the initiative. And sometimes there is a time when it was supposed, you remember, when during the time of I think it's COP, one of the previous COPs, which a Caribbean country was unable to host it in that country, then it was reverted back to Germany, the headquarters of UNFCCC. So there are issues which surround this. And so, in terms of then the Azerbaijan, we were part of this discussion in Dubai, and the question was that who is going to host? And there are countries which were floated, and Russia, you know, is a member of UN, is a member of UNFCCC, and facing a lot of sanctions because of the invasion of Ukraine.
16,500 sanctions.
16,500, and there should be more. And so there was a talk, in fact, to host the COP in Ukraine. You know, some decisions are done through consensus. So that country called Russia could not have allowed. Actually, it's an insult, you know. The magnitude of that meeting coming to that country, to that region, which Russia believes that it's fiefdom, you know, geopolitically, that it must give a nod. And so what happened actually was Azerbaijan came out. So if you look at the positioning of Azerbaijan, between, it is just at the tip of Middle East. It borders Iran, and also it is in Europe, Eastern Europe, and so its conduct politically has been very neutral, you know. So I think that for that matter, it was a compromise country. So the question of whether then it was at the end that capacity to host then came later on really, yes, it can, but you remember that even delegations have been reduced. It's a small country.
Yeah.
That's what we are grappling with, because it cannot host really that much. You know, in Dubai, we had 80,000 delegates. So each in all our delegations, including even some governments, have been reduced. We are not going to have that large delegations because of that, because the country has said we have a small space, but we are going to facilitate.
And the fact of the matter is that the conference is being held in a stadium.
Yes.
I mean, because they don't have a huge international convention center that can host that.
Yes.
But I want to turn to Susan here. Dr. Mithika is saying that this is an administrative issue. Do you agree with him, or do you see a strategic decision to have COP meetings in oil-producing countries? Because, I mean, would you then argue the same for Dubai? Would you argue the same for Sharm el-Sheikh?
Thank you. I think we need to recognize the element of capacity and ability to host, as he said. But what is also very critical is to ensure that if you're hosting, then the presidency is with you as a country. How well are you able to move from national context and focus on global issues? How well are you able to facilitate global conversations? So we are hoping that even as we go to Baku, despite the fact that it's an oil-producing nation, we are hoping that the global south can be heard in terms of climate financing, that we do not want loans, we want grants. We are hoping that they will facilitate an environment that will enable the polluters to listen to the non-polluters. We would call Africa non-polluting. We are hoping that they can see the world through, they can put on the lenses, not just the national lenses, but they can put on a global lens. So for me, whether it is in Baku or not, the bigger question is that this COP, if we're going to focus on financing, let it help us get out of corporate capture that we are seeing. So that would be my question to the presidency. So have you facilitated this? Yeah.
So for you, the issue is not so much more about the venue, but the outcomes of the conversations there.
Exactly.
I want to hear from you, Chita?
Memory.
Yeah, okay, let me call you Memory. Akinyi is fine. Yeah, Memory. Look, one of the critical issues that is going to be discussed in this meeting is climate financing. And more so, as Susan is saying, how more finances can trickle down to the global south, which unfortunately is the most affected by the vagaries of climate. What do you expect to hear from the meetings?
So one of the things is this COP is going to come up with a new collective quantified goal. So it's coming up with a new goal in terms of finance. Over the past COPs, we've been battling with the 100 billion commitment, which was never met. So we were together in Glasgow for COP, where we were actually saying, where is that 100 billion? And what the discussions were, the countries which were supposed to actually pay, because one, they are the polluters, they have the highest carbon emissions, and three is also what we are also calling reparations. You see, Africa has got the least in terms of the carbon emissions. Our terms of production, in terms of industrialization, is very low. And we actually have the brunt of the whole global climate crisis. Yet we do not have the financing that allows us to be able to also transition. We're talking about all this green transition, to be able to be at par and to actually get out of this climate poverty that we find ourselves as developing countries. So what we are expecting is to really have candid discussions, and for the rich countries, I think Dr. Mithika likes calling them rich countries, but we are the ones who've made them rich. So we want countries to really own up into their commitments. We find that most of the time they are talking loans, like what, to increase the debt burden. And we know already on the African continent, we are already, of all the countries that have defaulted on debt, it has been 4 African countries. So we're already either in debt distress or we are already in debt catastrophe. So we cannot have finance coming as more debt. We must have it in a way where it also allows us to be able to meet some of the goals, if it's in loss and damage, if it's adaptation. So the Africa group has actually been pushing very strongly in that debate, in the negotiations. And I think what is always disappointing is we already have countries which come just to ensure that there is no decision based on that, because they do not want to commit. So
the so-called disruptors.
The disruptors, but they're disrupting in a way where we have a global crisis. We're in a poly crisis as we speak, and we really need to have, not to waste a lot of time coming up with, okay, these are the technicalities of the new collective quantified goals, but to actually come with means of implementation and means of making sure that the money actually gets to the frontline climate activists, to the countries which are affected by the climate crisis. So we are really expecting to really have, I think from the global south, we really are very much committed in terms of pushing for that, and we really want the global north and the rich countries to be able to own up, because what we need is really the financing on the ground.
I want to bring you on board, Dr. Mithika. I mean, you've been a champion of increasing adaptation finance here in Africa, and when you look at, for example, in 2022, Africa, which bears the brunt of climate, of the effects of climate change. I mean, it's received less than $25 billion US in terms of climate adaptation financing, and there has been clarion calls to increase these to even $100 billion. I mean, do you expect to see this happening in COP29?
COP29 is not a finance mobilization COP. It lays a broad framework on what is required for really, it's a conversation. And as he has mentioned, we in COP15 in Copenhagen in 2009, the global community agreed on first of all, there was something on short term, on the fast track, which when the President Obama was handing the United States. And so this, the fast track of 10 billion, which we never saw, which was to go to one year. And then, of course, now the infamous $100 billion US, which actually there was no...
Just a minute, we need to go to the Milimani Law Courts, where I can see the bench is already seated. We'll be back. Just have a listen.
Of 2024, and Nairobi petition number E541 of 2024. The petitioners in those consolidated laws: 1, RIGATHI Gachagua; 2, Obuli Namea; 3, Kennedy Kamithiu Gachege; 4, Dennis Okumu; 5, Simon Muchangi; 6, Peter Maina; 7, Gema Watho Association; 8, John Mugo Kiragu; 9, Njomo John; 10, Caroline Wambui Mwangi; 11, Dr. Clarence Eboso Mwaresa; 12, Wanjiru Mwangi. Those are the petitioners in cohort number 1. Respondents in that cohort are 1, the Speaker of the National Assembly of Kenya, 2, the National Assembly of Kenya, 3, the Speaker of the Senate of Kenya, 4, the Senate of Kenya, 5, the Deputy Speaker, National Assembly, 6, Honorable Moses Masika Watangula, 7, Honorable Amason Kingi Jeffa, 8,